Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different. You're not just visiting ancient Rome, you're waking up in it. The year is somewhere in the 2nd century CE, give or take a few emperors. And no, you're not in a villa with columns and singing fountains. You're in an insula, a Roman apartment block built more for quantity than quality. The air is warm already. Not hot, but the kind of sticky, cramped warmth that comes from a few dozen people living, cooking, and sleeping in very close quarters. You blink awake on your straw mattress. There's a wooden shutter, half open, letting in a pale blue light. And also the sound of someone shouting about spoiled lentils 2 floors down. The smell hits next. It's complex. A blend of old bread, musty wood, cooking oil, and the distinct whiff of whatever your upstairs neighbor is emptying from their chamber pot this morning. Welcome to Rome. You probably won't survive long here, between the questionable sanitation, the aggressive pigeons, and the risk of your apartment collapsing. Not a joke. It's a miracle you've made it this far. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stretch, stiff from sleeping on what is technically a mattress, but feels more like a sack of old rope. You sit up carefully, bumping your head on the low beam above. This apartment isn't generous with space. You're on one of the upper floors, which means cheaper rent and fewer amenities, including no direct access to water. You'll have to go downstairs if you want any, and hope the cistern isn't dry again. Your first step of the day is cautious. The floor creaks. You pass your roommate, who is still snoring loudly and has somehow kicked off his entire blanket into your corner. His tunic is crumpled in a pile. You step over it and rummage for yours. Simple, undyed wool, a little itchy, and very Roman. You drape it over your shoulder and cinch it with a belt that has seen better days and possibly several owners before. The apartment is dark, lit only by what sunlight filters through the shutters. On a low shelf sit 2 clay oil lamps, one empty, one barely full. You make a mental note to buy more olive oil. Or steal some if you're feeling ambitious and your conscience is still sleeping. You make your way to the stairs, which are narrow and steep. You pass a neighbor muttering about rats. Another asks if you've seen her chicken. You haven't? You nod politely. On the ground floor, the world opens up into noisy, sunlit chaos. The street is already alive, vendors shouting, children running barefoot, carts creaking past with wheels that sound like exhausted birds. You squint against the brightness and head toward a nearby fountain to splash your face. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Insulae could rise up to 5 or 6 stories high, with the lower floors reserved for wealthier tenants and the upper ones for the poor. Fires were common, and maintenance was inconsistent. Historians still argue whether the average insula was a fire trap or a genius use of limited space. Probably both. You pass a bakery on the corner. The smell of fresh bread is enough to make you briefly consider crime. The baker's already shouting at a boy for stealing a crust. The boy grins and runs, justice, Roman style. You pick up a cup of lukewarm wine, yes, for breakfast. It's watered down, slightly sour, but it takes the edge off. You also snag a piece of coarse bread. It's hard, but you dip it in the wine and it becomes edible-ish. You sit on a low wall in the sun, watching as a fruit vendor arranges overly confident figs into a perfect little pyramid. Someone knocks it over within minutes. The vendor sighs. The figs look unbothered. A man walks past carrying a cage of chickens and humming a hymn. A dog follows him, hopeful. The chickens look resigned. You nod to the man. He nods back. It's not glamorous, this Roman morning, but it's real, alive, imperfect in the most comforting way. And for now, you're here, sitting on a sun-warmed wall, sipping second-rate wine and watching the empire stretch its arms and begin another long, strange day. The wine-soaked bread has softened just enough that you don't break a tooth on it. You chew slowly, letting the sour tang of the wine coat your tongue. It's not exactly a gourmet breakfast, but in the Roman Empire it's about par for the course. You glance around the bustling street. The baker keeps shouting. Someone is sweeping dust that refuses to cooperate, and two boys are racing a wooden hoop down the alley, nearly bowling over a man balancing amphorae. He doesn't drop them. It's impressive. You give him a silent round of applause from your wall perch. Now it's time to clean up, Roman style. You head back up to the insula, dodging a runaway chicken that may or may not be the same one your neighbor was looking for earlier. Back in your room, you pull out your grooming kit, a chipped bronze mirror, a wooden comb with 3 teeth missing, and a small ceramic jar filled with tooth powder. This is where your Roman morning takes a gritty turn. You dip your finger into the powder made from charcoal, ashes, and maybe a hint of crushed mint, and start rubbing it over your teeth. It doesn't foam, it doesn't sparkle, it's basically spicy sand. But your breath is better than before, and in this world, that's a win. You rinse your mouth with a swish of watered wine, spit out the bitterness, and comb your hair with great care. Not because you're vain, but because Romans notice things like unruly hair. Someone might comment, and passive-aggressively too. Your tunic is wrinkled but presentable. You adjust the belt, grab a second layer, a faded grape-colored pallium to toss over your shoulder for flair, and step back outside. You feel, well, not clean, but clean enough. You hear the soft scrape of a razor from a nearby doorway. A man is shaving his chin with a dull blade and a look of intense concentration. His son sits nearby, holding a cracked bowl of water and trying not to sneeze. The ritual of grooming in Rome isn't private, it's communal. Barbershops double as gossip hubs, philosophy corners, and sometimes places to get yelled at for your political opinions. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Romans didn't bathe in the morning. That came later at the baths. For now, the basics, teeth, hair, face, are handled at home or in local shops. Deodorant, a mix of perfumed oils and strategic optimism. Soap, not quite. Olive oil and estridiol do most of the heavy lifting. You notice your neighbor airing out her bedding, hanging it from the window while arguing with someone 2 floors down about whether or not pigeons can be trained to steal jewelry. You're not sure who's winning. Breakfast is now technically over, but in Rome, it was never a big deal to begin with. Most people grab something small, bread, cheese, a few olives, then get on with the business of living. Lunch and dinner carry the weight of flavor and ceremony. Breakfast, functional at best. Fringe tidbit, some Romans preferred pulse in the morning, a sort of barley porridge that could be seasoned with honey or cheese, or left plain and deeply sad. You had some once. You'd prefer the wine-soaked bread again, thanks. Now you make your way toward the main street, stepping over a broken amphora that's been there since last week. A small boy tries to sell you dried dates from a palm leaf basket. You buy one. It's sticky, sweet, and tastes like it's been sitting in the sun since Trajan. As you chew, you notice how the city breathes around you. Upper-class men in spotless white togas glide past, their servants carefully lifting the hems to avoid puddles. A woman in a deep blue stola carries a bundle of laurel branches, followed by a small girl who insists on dragging a tiny cart full of lemons. Every face tells a story, some louder than others. Historians still argue whether Roman urban life was more chaotic or coordinated. Truthfully, it's both. The streets are noisy but purposeful. The citizens grumble, yes, but they keep moving, and behind every window, every shop, every clatter of sandals, something is happening. A priest walks by, muttering a prayer. A merchant haggles over the price of pepper. A thief disappears into the crowd with something that used to belong to someone else. The city moves like water, fast, crowded, and always finding a new path. You feel your stomach settling, your limbs waking, your mind stretching like a cat in a sunbeam. The day has officially begun. You pass a low stone bench, shaded by a vine-covered awning. A couple of elderly men are already deep into a conversation about how everything was better under Augustus. One gestures wildly with a crust of bread. The other nods as if the bread has made an excellent point. You smile and keep walking. Your destination lies ahead, but you're in no rush. The sun rises slowly behind the rooftops. Laundry flaps in the breeze. And a very confident pigeon perches on the head of a marble statue of Minerva, as if claiming wisdom by osmosis. You stop at the fountain to rinse your hands, splash your face once more, and look at your reflection. In the water, still tired, still you, but just a little more Roman now. You step into the rising bustle of Rome with your tunic slightly askew, date residue on your fingertips, and the vague optimism of someone who believes today might be the day their sandals don't give out mid-crosswalk. The street hums with energy, human, animal, and something in between. You dodge a mule cart stacked precariously with firewood and slide into the moving current of people heading toward the Forum. The Forum Romanum isn't just a destination, it's the center of everything. Politics, religion, shopping, lawsuits, rumors, bad jokes, mysterious smells. They all swirl together here like dust in sunlight. Getting to it means navigating a gauntlet of street life. The first challenge, cobblestones, uneven, worn, and designed by someone who clearly hated ankles. You've mastered the Roman walk by now, half stride, half awareness. Step too fast and you trip on a rut. Too slow and a senator's litter bearers bump into you like a passive-aggressive chariot. You pass a line of vendors hawking everything from garlic ropes to tiny statues of gods with questionable facial expressions. A man shouts about his unbeatable plum prices. Another waves a live eel in your general direction. You pretend not to see it. Then comes the perfume seller. His stall radiates with clouds of scented oil, so thick they practically shimmer. You inhale lavender, rose, and something suspiciously like boiled onion. You move on quickly. As you approach the edge of the Forum, the air shifts. There's more open space, more voices overlapping into a kind of civic symphony. Columns loom. Around you, fluted and proud, statues stare blankly in all directions. You pause near one, possibly a senator, possibly someone's uncle, and let the weight of the place settle into your shoulders. This is where it happens, where laws are made, where deals are struck, where people are loudly wrong in public and completely unashamed. Here's your mainstream fact. The Roman Forum was the hub of public life for centuries. Temples, courts, marketplaces, and meeting halls all shared this uneven plaza, turning it into the beating heart of the city. It was never tidy, rarely quiet, but always alive. You wander through the crowd, picking up bits of conversation like fallen coins. Two men argue about grain prices. A woman gestures passionately about her neighbor's dog, which apparently ate her laundry. A boy recites poetry to a goat. The goat looks unimpressed. You spot a scribe perched on a crate, taking dictation for a man too wealthy or too lazy to write his own legal complaint. Nearby, a couple of teenagers practice a speech, stumbling over Latin declensions while an old man corrects the mid-bite of an apple. You pass a small shrine tucked between two columns, smoke curling upward from an offering dish. Someone left a garland. Someone else left a smear of something red, wine hopefully. You touch the edge of the altar in passing. It's still warm from the sun. Historians still argue whether the forum was more ceremonial or functional. Was it a sacred center, a glorified food court, a stage for self-important speeches? The answer, as always, is yes, and also depends on the hour. You're jostled gently by a man in a toga so blindingly white it practically glows. He smells like mint and ambition. You nod. He does not nod back. Senators, am I right? You find a low wall to sit on, legs stretched, watching the endless theatre of Rome unfold. A dog runs through with someone's sandal in its mouth. A child gives chase. The sandal wins. You bite into another piece of bread from earlier. It's drier now. You chew anyway. The forum's not really a place for lunch, but no one will stop you. In Rome, food is wherever you are. Fringe tidbit. Some of the statues here have had their heads replaced over time. Different emperors, different heroes, same body, same message. Power is recyclable. You stroll farther in, stopping near the rostra, the speaker's platform. A man stands there now, arms flailing, eyes wild. He's arguing that pigeons are divine messengers and should be honored accordingly. No one interrupts. Some nod. One man claps. You pass a temple with a marble stairway shaded and cool. A woman sits at the top, weaving something with slow fingers. She hums a tune older than any building around her. You don't recognize it, but it makes the air feel thicker, like memory. You sit again, letting your legs dangle over the edge of the stairs. A bee investigates your sleeve. You politely ask it to leave. It doesn't. And here's the strange magic of it all. The forum shouldn't work. It's chaotic, mismatched, too loud and too layered. But it does work, somehow. Rome flows through it like water in a cracked basin, never quite neat, but never stopping either. You close your eyes briefly just to listen, footsteps on stone, Latin echoing in every direction, the buzz of people, negotiating, accusing, flirting, lying, praising, joking, the hum of a city completely convinced of its own permanence. You stand, stretch your arms and step back into the current. Rome's waiting, and your day is far from over. You follow a quieter road now, the forum gradually falling behind you, the sounds softening to a distant mutter. The crowds thin, the air clears, and the smell shifts from street food and sweaty politics to warm bread, herbs, and something like beeswax. You're headed into a different kind of Roman rhythm, the domestic kind. The street leads to a residential district where houses sit lower to the ground, clustered close with painted walls and tiled roofs that seem to nod toward one another. These aren't the creaky insulae of the working poor. These are domus, homes of the middle to upper classes, carefully curated and constantly swept. You knock once, gently, on a pale red door with a bronze knocker shaped like a lion's head. It swings open to reveal a shaded atrium, cool and echoing with soft footfalls. Sunlight filters in from the square opening above, casting bright shapes onto the mosaic floor. The compluvium drips quietly into the basin below, the impluvium, collected rainwater glowing like a shallow sky. You step inside. Immediately, you're offered a cup of watered wine and a towel for your hands. The household slaves move like background music, quiet, efficient, always watching. One girl adjusts a garland that's drooping over a household altar. Another boy fans the coals near the small brazier in the corner. This house belongs to a friend of a friend. You've been invited to observe, not disturb. So you keep your hands tucked and your eyes open. The lady of the house appears in a flowing, stola the color of wet marble, her hair arranged in a style that suggests either a high-status salon visit or a very patient sister. She nods once in greeting, then turns to supervise the kitchen. There's a midday meal coming, and everything must be perfect. Here's your mainstream fact. Roman households were run with military precision. The paterfamilias held the legal power, but the materfamilias kept the wheels greased, socially, emotionally, and culinarily. You pass into the tablinum, a sort of home office/gallery space filled with scrolls, busts, and that one really uncomfortable-looking stool. A man sits cross-legged reading something aloud to himself. A letter from a cousin in Gaul, apparently full of wine reviews and mud complaints. He waves you in distractedly, offers you a fig, and goes back to muttering. On the walls, frescoes. Bloom with color, scenes from myth, a garden with birds, the occasional awkward cherub. They're not perfectly preserved. Cracks run through some, but they still glow in the sun. In the corner, a boy is polishing a bronze mirror with surprising intensity. You ask him what he sees. "A face I didn't ask for," he replies flatly, then grins, probably quoting something. You follow the quiet thump of footsteps down a hall to the kitchen. It's smoky, hot, alive. A slave stirs a pot of lentils while another grinds spices in a stone mortar. A chicken squawks once from a basket. A cat watches the whole operation with great suspicion from atop a high shelf. Fringe tidbit, Roman kitchens didn't always smell delicious. Between open flames, garum, fermented fish sauce, and limited ventilation, many households embraced flavorful chaos as a lifestyle. The cook offers you a spoonful of something unidentifiable and steamy. You take a cautious sip. It tastes like garlic, honey, and maybe regret. You smile politely. The cook laughs. You're ushered next into the peristylium, the inner courtyard garden. It's quieter here. Shaded colonnades circle trimmed hedges, and small fountains gurgle peacefully beside potted herbs. A woman in a pale tunic kneels beside a rosemary bush, murmuring something as she pinches the stems. You're not sure if it's a prayer or a recipe. A child runs past with a wooden ball, followed by a nursemaid carrying 2 sandals and 1 sock. No one's in a rush. Everything flows here, structured, yes, but softened by routine. Historians still argue whether Roman domestic life was as harmonious as these moments suggest. The reality is more complex, a blend of hierarchy, intimacy, repetition, and survival. The domus was a sanctuary, but also a stage. You're led to a low couch near the garden wall and offered a handful of nuts. The cat has followed you. It sits beside your foot and begins licking its paw with an expression that suggests disapproval of your sandals. You listen as voices float through the house. Someone singing softly in the bath, a pair of brothers arguing over dice, a woman dictating, a letter with enough flair to suggest it's more poem than message. You look up toward the open roof. The sky is sharp blue, framed by the colonnade like a painting. The light shifts slightly. It's nearly noon. The house breathes around you quietly, comfortably. And here's the thing, in the middle of the empire's noise and ambition, this is where its heart lives, in the rhythm of mortar and pestle, in the flick of a broom. The sun is high now, filtering through painted shutters and catching in the bronze of door hinges. You slip back out of the domus and into the narrow lane that winds behind the residences. Here, the walls are higher, and the air smells less of perfume and more of drying laundry, spiced with the faint bitterness of someone nearby cooking lentils too enthusiastically. You're heading toward a place that doesn't show up on Roman coins or in marble reliefs. It's quieter, smaller, but no less essential. You're going to school. Not a massive academy or temple of higher knowledge, but a shaded corner of a friend's atrium where a tutor has spread out scrolls, wax tablets, and the kind of expectations that make children sit very straight and blink a lot. As you approach, you hear it. The soft scratch of styluses, the muttered repetition of lines, and the occasional sharp clap from the literator. The first-level teacher, who deals mostly in letters, numbers, and the art of sitting still. A boy chants the alphabet with a tune only he seems to know. A girl frowns deeply as she tries to copy a line of Virgil's poetry into her wax tablet. It doesn't go well. She scrapes it clean and begins again. Roman education, like Roman everything, begins early. Boys and girls from wealthier families often start lessons at age 7, learning to read, write, and speak persuasively. For most girls, it ends there. Domestic skills take precedence. For boys, it continues. Grammar, rhetoric, maybe even philosophy, depending on the family's ambitions and budget. You take a spot near the wall, watching as a scribe recites a list of moral maxims in a tone that suggests he doesn't believe a word of them. A Roman is not idle, he says. Then he yawns. Here's your mainstream fact. Roman children used wax tablets for everyday writing, scraping them smooth again and again with the flat side of their stylus. Parchment and papyrus were precious, used only when permanence mattered. Fringe or tidbit. One archaeological site preserved a set of children's tablets with doodles in the margins, a fish with legs, a chicken wearing a toga, proof that some things never change. The tutor now moves among his pupils, correcting a verb here, adjusting posture there, and occasionally tapping someone's head with the end of a scroll for emphasis. You flinch sympathetically. Outside, the sounds of Rome keep rolling. Carts creaking, sandals slapping, the distant bark of a vendor yelling something about garum. Inside, it's a different rhythm, concentrated, repetitive, sleepy in the way only. Midday memorization can be. A boy drops his stylus. It clatters like thunder. Everyone jumps. You're handed a tablet and encouraged to copy a phrase. You try. The wax resists. Your lines wobble. The boy beside you peeks over and smirks. You offer him your most dignified nod and continue scratching. In the back corner, a secondary-level student copies lines in Greek. He mutters under his breath, pausing occasionally to count syllables on his fingers. Homer, probably, the Iliad, was popular with the ambitious set. Historians still argue whether Roman education was universally accessible or mostly reserved for the elite. Truthfully, it's both. Some slaves were educated, some citizens weren't. And plenty of kids learned more in the marketplace than the classroom. The lesson shifts now. The tutor asks each student to recite a short speech. One girl stumbles, but finishes. A boy fumbles a word and blames his breakfast. The tutor sighs and begins again. Eventually, the lesson ends. Scrolls are rolled, tablets stacked, cloaks adjusted. One boy tries to sneak a wax figure into his satchel. The tutor spots it and confiscates it with the solemnity of a temple priest. You step out with the others into the brightness, your eyes adjusting. You've earned a break. and possibly a headache. Someone's mother arrives with a bundle of honey cakes. The students swarm like bees. You manage to snag one, warm, flaky, and sticky. You eat it slowly, standing under a fig tree, letting the sweetness make up for the grammar. And here's the thing, Roman learning wasn't about enlightenment, it was about preparation. A good Roman citizen had to argue, remember, quote, compare, not to seek truth necessarily, but to win. Still in the quiet between recitations, there's something else. Curiosity, thoughtfulness, a sense of rhythm between the scratching of styluses and the thud of sandal heels on stone. You walk away from the school, brushing crumbs from your tunic, the taste of honey still clinging to your teeth. And you think, maybe you learned something today, after all. The road stretches wide now, dappled with patches of golden sunlight filtering between columns and awnings. Your next destination is less dusty than the classroom and more fragrant, though also much louder. You're going to the baths. The thermae are more than just a place to get clean. They're social centers, fitness hubs, libraries, and occasionally competitive echo chambers. You reach the entrance just as a pair of teenage boys race each other up the marble steps, their tunics already half off and sandals flapping like startled birds. The doorkeeper nods at you with minimal interest. You hand over a small coin, modest but enough to get in, and step into the changing room. Stone benches line the perimeter. Hooks hang from the walls. You spot a man untangling a robe with the same effort one might put into preparing for battle. You undress quickly, fold your tunic, and store it in a cubby. Not secure, not secret, but that's what the capsarius is for, the bathhouse attendant, currently half asleep and chewing on a fig. You step barefoot onto the warmed floor of the tepidarium, the medium-temperature room. The air is thick with steam and the scent of bay leaves and sweat. Moisture clings to your skin immediately. Around you, men recline on benches, chatting about everything from politics to plumbing to yesterday's dice game. One man gestures with such energy that his sandal flies off mid-thought. Here's your mainstream fact. Roman baths followed a specific order. Tepidarium to warm the body, caldarium to open the pores, and finally, the frigidarium to close them again. A kind of ancient spa circuit, complete with scraping tools and unsolicited opinions. You move next to the caldarium, the hot room. The temperature hits you like an oven door. Your skin prickles. A slave pours warm water over the tiles. Another ladles it into a shallow stone basin. You join a few others seated on low stools and wait. A man nearby picks up his strigil, a curved metal scraper, and begins cleaning the oil and sweat from his arms in smooth practice strokes. You're handed your own by a helpful bath boy. You try. You accidentally flick some of it onto your neighbor. He glares. You apologize. He shrugs. Happens all the time. Fringe tidbit. Some elite Romans used perfumed oils so intensely scented that their presence lingered in the air hours after they left. One emperor allegedly used oils infused with violet and cinnamon. You, today, smell like bay leaves and humble pie. You dunk a ladle of water over your head and feel something between revival and collapse. The conversation continues around you. Quiet. Gossip about a senator's wig, a debate over whether oysters are still in season, and a heated argument about the best wrestling coach in town. Someone laughs. Someone slips. Someone breaks wind with the confidence of a retired centurion. No one flinches. The final stop is the frigidarium, the cold plunge. The pool gleams, pale blue and totally unforgiving. You inch in slowly. The water slaps your ankles like an icy scolding. You keep going. Knees, waist, chest. Then the full plunge. Your heart skips once, then settles. You emerge, gasping softly, skin tingling, mind clearer than it's been all day. Around you, others do the same. Some plunging, some wading. One man in, dramatically pretending he's frozen solid. You towel off with a rough cloth that feels like it's exfoliating your soul. A boy offers a drop of oil for your arms, cheap, slightly citrusy. You nod, grateful. Historians still debate whether the baths were more hygienic or social. Were they centers of health or hubs of chatter? Probably both. Rome didn't separate function from flair. You dress slowly, your tunic clinging a little to damp skin, and step back into the fading afternoon light. The world feels softer now, your muscles are loose, your thoughts less tangled. You buy a piece of hot bread from a vendor outside. It steams in your hand. You eat it walking, crumbs falling in a trail behind you like edible punctuation marks. Clean, refreshed, and only slightly scraped. Rome waits. The day continues. The warmth of the bath still clings to your skin as you step back into the heart of the city, your hair damp, your limbs loose and slow-moving. The streets have shifted slightly. There's more movement now, shopkeepers calling out to late customers, children darting between market stalls, and a musician half-heartedly playing a lyre near a statue that may or may not be a former emperor. You're headed to one of the most vibrant corners of the city, the marketplace, the Macellum, the beating stomach of Rome. As you approach, the smell arrives first. It's a layered aroma: bread, meat, wine, herbs, and something you try not to identify too closely. Not every Roman smell is a winner. The market is a chaos of clatter and color. Stalls made from wood and faded cloth are packed side by side, each one offering something more urgent, more flavorful, more shouted. You thread your way through the crowd, careful not to bump the woman balancing 3 baskets of leeks on her shoulder. A fishmonger hollers about fresh mackerel, slapping one onto the table like a declaration of war. A boy beside him fans the flies with a palm frond. They return immediately, they always do. You pause at a stall displaying spices in small clay dishes, saffron, pepper, cumin, and a mysterious greenish powder labeled "very good for husbands." You don't ask. The vendor, a woman with 10 gold bangles and 1 missing tooth, offers you a sample of dried figs. You chew thoughtfully. Sweet, sticky, possibly laced with ambition. You nod. She smiles. Here's your mainstream fact. Roman markets sold everything from produce and fish to imported silks, scrolls, and oddly specific cosmetics. Some stalls were permanent, others transient, and bartering was more art than science. Fringe. Tidbit. Some vendors kept trained parrots to squawk catchy phrases and attract attention. One nearby screeches, "Fresh lentils, fewer weevils today," in a voice eerily similar to Cicero. You're both impressed and mildly alarmed. You wander. Past the butcher's stall, less poetic, more visceral. The man behind the counter is sharpening a knife that could double as a boat oar. Meat hangs from hooks, glistening. A young apprentice swats at a dog that looks far too hopeful. Further down, a potter sells chipped wares at a discount. You pick up a cup. Red clay, a little uneven, decorated with what might be a horse or a very tall cat. It fits in your hand just right. You trade 2 coins and a smile. You hear laughter behind you. 2 women argue over the price of eggs, both gesturing with loaves of bread as if they're debating dueling options. The seller finally sighs and throws in a sprig of rosemary for peace. It works. The market is more than shopping. It's storytelling. Everyone here has an angle, a sales pitch, a tale about how their olives are blessed by Mercury himself. You nod, smile, taste, wander. You pass a wine cellar with 3 amphorae arranged like trophies. He offers you a sip from a chipped ladle. You accept. It tastes like smoke and vinegar, but he watches you closely, so you smile like it's ambrosia. He looks pleased. Historians still argue whether Roman marketplaces were strictly regulated or gloriously chaotic. The truth, as usual, is somewhere in the middle. Permits existed. Rules were posted. But when a senator wants oysters in August, someone makes it happen. Regulation bends. You stop at a stall that sells writing supplies, reed pens, ink pots, little scrolls. A girl with ink-stained fingers offers you a bit of papyrus with a proverb written on it. He who eats garlic speaks clearly, but alone. You laugh. She doesn't. Nearby, a man sells perfumes in tiny glass vials shaped like animals. You sniff one shaped like a rabbit. It smells like lavender and honey. The vendor insists it attracts muses. You're skeptical, but the rabbit's cute. Your final stop is a bread stall. The loaves are warm, round, stamped with baker's marks to indicate who baked them and what they cost. You select one and the vendor hands it to you wrapped in fig leaves. A nice touch. You step away from the stalls and find a shaded bench near a dry fountain. You sit, you eat, you watch. The crowd pulses, contracts, expands again. A woman sings as she wraps cheese in cloth. A boy chases a chicken that escaped its crate. A man brags that his wine cured his cousin's limp. The cousin limps past, unimpressed. You lean back, bread in hand, eyes half closed. The market may not be sacred. It may not be tidy, but it is alive. And in Rome, being alive, vividly, messily, fragrantly alive, is the only currency that really matters. With the market slowly retreating behind you and a small hunk of bread still tucked in your satchel, you wind your way down a quieter path, a little narrower, a little dustier, and entirely more peaceful. This is the artisan district, less shouting, more scraping, and the steady, rhythmic tap-tap-tap of skilled hands shaping the city behind. The scenes, you arrive at the workshop of a sandal maker. Not the flashiest trade, but essential. Rome is a city of walkers, and feet don't forgive shoddy craftsmanship. The door is open, as it usually is. You step over the threshold and are immediately greeted by the scent of tanned leather, beeswax, and faintly burnt glue. The shop is cool inside, shadowy, but the light coming in from the open front casts a perfect golden spotlight onto a man hunched over a half-finished sandal. His hands are dark with dye and creased like cured hide. He looks up, grunts once in recognition, then gestures toward a 3-legged stool. You sit. He doesn't speak much, this man. Artisans rarely do. His language is motion. He threads a strip of leather through a sole, ties it, tightens it, knots it, and slices the end clean with a knife he probably inherited from a grandfather, or possibly made himself. You notice rows of sandals hanging on pegs, different sizes, styles, wear levels. Some are dainty, delicate, the kind a senator's wife might wear to a garden party. Others are thick-soled, reinforced, meant for soldiers, or stubborn cobblestones. One pair looks half-eaten. He catches you, staring at them. "Returned by a goat," he mutters. Here's your mainstream fact. Most Roman citizens wore sandals called calcae or soli, made of leather with straps wrapping around the foot and ankle. For the upper classes, sandals could be dyed red or adorned with intricate knots to show rank or wealth. Fringe tidbit: Emperor Caligula reportedly owned sandals decorated with pearls and gold thread. This workshop, however, offers less bling, more blister prevention. A boy, probably the artisan's apprentice, emerges from the back with a mouthful of nails and a fistful of thread. He spits one into his hand and starts reinforcing a cracked sole, eyes narrowed in concentration. You watch him in silence. He's good, maybe not great. Yet, the sandal maker offers you a scrap of leather to hold. It's warm, pliable, smells like sun and effort. You rub your fingers across the surface. It resists, just slightly. Alive in its own way, the walls are decorated not with art, but with tools. Awls, hammers, curved knives, punches. Each one hanging in its exact place, waiting. Ready? A quiet army of usefulness. Outside, someone curses loudly. A wheelbarrow tips, no one rushes. Rome doesn't panic over small collapses. Inside, the artisan finishes a pair, sets them down and begin. Another without pause. His hands are slower now, but sure. Decades of motion preserved in tendon and callus. He glances over and nods toward the apprentice, who is trying to measure your foot without directly touching you. You extend it anyway. He traces its outline on a scrap of wood, nods, and begins, talking to himself about arch width and toe space. You listen, intrigued. You never thought your feet had such opinions. Behind the curtain, someone sings, softly, almost to themselves. A woman, maybe a wife or sister, preparing a meal or polishing straps for market. The song is old, simple. You hum along, not knowing the tune, but catching its rhythm anyway. The artisan takes a break, pours a small clay cup of wine, hands one to you. It's dusty and cool with a faint herbal aftertaste. You sip and nod. He grunts, which might be "you're welcome," or "don't spill on the sandals." Historians still argue whether Roman artisans were seen as lower-class laborers or respectable specialists. The truth, again, is both. Skill didn't always equal status, but it did earn respect, especially if your sandals didn't fall apart during a festival. A customer arrives, a thin man with well-polished teeth and dusty robes. He points at a pair on the wall, frowns, points again, frowns harder, then finally gestures to have something custom-made. The artisan doesn't rush. He nods, takes a measurement, and begins. A transaction of quiet purpose. You look down at your current sandals. The sole is wearing thin. The strap is fraying. You consider placing an order. Instead, you reach into your pouch and hand the artisan your chipped market cup. He inspects it, shrugs and says, "2 more like this and we'll talk."
A joke? Maybe. The apprentice hands you a new pair to try. Simple, sturdy, just a touch of flair in the stitching. You slip them on. Your foot feels, for once, understood. The artisan watches, squints, then nods. You bow slightly, thank them, and
Step back out into the sunlit lane, the ground feeling different beneath your feet. Softer, steadier, supported. You walk slowly, feeling each stone, each arch, each echo of sandal against ancient stone. Rome moves on, and now, so do you. Your sandals squeak slightly as you walk, a reminder that they're new, or at least newer than your stride. The market noise has faded, replaced by a different kind of rhythm. Quiet courtyards, bird calls, and the occasional hollow echo of voices, bouncing between narrow alleys. It's lunchtime in Rome. The smell finds you before the sauce does. Herbs sizzling in oil, bread just catching at the edges of two hot coals, and that unmistakable tang of strong cheese stored in a less than strictly regulated
environment.
Your stomach remembers it's been a while since breakfast, and your feet guide you toward the nearest papina, a simple Roman eatery wedged between a laundress's stall and what appears to be someone's goat-themed pottery gallery. You duck under a low lintel and step inside. The papina is dim, cool, and half full. There's a long stone counter embedded with terracotta jars, dolia, each filled with something either stewing, fermenting, or daring you to try it. Behind the counter, a man with flour on his tunic and a forehead that glistens with effort greets you with a nod. You sit on a worn bench next to a man already deep into a bowl of lentils. He looks up once, then continues chewing like it's a job. Today's menu, as always, is verbal. Boiled chickpeas, grilled fish, flatbread, leftover stew, and olives so salty they might count as currency. You order a bit of everything and accept a clay cup of watered wine. It's tepid and mildly vinegary, perfectly average, perfectly Roman. Here's your mainstream fact. Lunch, prandium, was often a simple, on-the-go affair in ancient Rome. For most people, it meant a quick bite from a food stall or a cold snack brought from home. No one expected fine dining at noon, fringe tidbit. Some Roman diners believed garlic was a divine cleanser of both body and mind. Others thought it ruined poetry. You eat yours anyway and feel spiritually chaotic. The stew arrives in a shallow bowl. Beans, barley, a hint of something green and unidentifiable. You dip your bread in. It's thick, peppery, and more nourishing than attractive. The cheese, wrapped in a fig leaf, smells intense but tastes sharp and surprisingly fresh. Around you, people eat with quiet focus. No forks, of course, just fingers, knives, and occasionally a spoon carved from horn or bronze. You opt for the bread scoop technique. It's messy, but effective. Two men debate loudly about last week's chariot races. One insists the Reds are cursed, the other calls him a sponge-brained fool. They clink cups and continue eating. No grudges, just gladiator gossip and chickpeas. A stray dog noses the doorway. The cook waves a spoon at it. The dog retreats, but not far. The woman next to you, dressed in faded purple, hair pinned with a bronze comb, offers you a bite of her fig tart. You accept. It's dry but sweet, with just enough texture to count as dessert. You thank her. She grunts, then asks if you know anything about her cousin's missing jug. You don't. She shrugs. The room quiets for a moment as a man begins singing softly. Half a tune, half a mumble. It's not a performance, just a habit. The kind of background music that fills a city's belly. Historians still argue whether these eateries were respectable or rowdy. Truthfully, they were both. Some popinae were meeting spots for craftsmen and merchants, others for gamblers, drinkers, or the occasional off-duty soldier telling slightly exaggerated war stories. You finish your meal with a dried date, sticky and sweet, then wash it down with the last sip of wine. It's warm now. The clay cup smells faintly of cumin and old conversations. You pay your coin, more out of custom than enforcement, and step back outside into the blinding sun. The street is quieter now. The midday lull has begun. A group of children plays with a stick and hoop. A woman sweeps dust from her doorway only to have it replaced immediately by the wind. A cat watches everything from atop a shutter, utterly unimpressed. You find a shaded archway and sit, letting the food settle, your eyes adjusting to the calm. You think about the lunch, simple, salty, imperfect. But it worked. It filled you, gave you a reason to pause, to sit among strangers and chew slowly, unbothered by speed or ceremony. Rome doesn't rush lunch, not because it's sacred, but because it's there. Something to be done, something to be shared. You rest your head against the cool stone behind you and listen. Someone's whistling. Someone's snoring. Someone's counting coins slowly, and, for a moment, the whole city exhales together. The sun begins its slow arc downward, casting longer shadows across the marble streets and gilding every dusty surface with that late afternoon warmth Rome wears so well. You leave your quiet perch under the archway, stretching out a crick in your neck and brushing a crumb or two from your tunic. Time to return to the public sphere, just in case Rome's political machine has decided to get dramatic while you were eating lentils. You wander back toward the colonnades, those shaded arcades lining the forum, and nearby basilicas, where voices cluster in corners and business mixes freely with philosophy. The Romans love a good archway, not just for the shade, but for the acoustics. It's easier to gossip under an echo. You slide into one of the walkways and find yourself among men in togas of varying whiteness. The brighter the toga, the more recently it was bleached, and often the more eager the wearer is to be seen in it. One man adjusts his drape so carefully that he nearly trips on his own hem. This is the realm of clientes and patroni, clients and patrons. Rome's social ladder is a complicated web of obligations and favors where influence flows down and loyalty flows up. You watch as a well-fed man accepts a scroll from a much thinner man who bows slightly and mutters something about needing
assistance with a property dispute. The patron nods, barely listening.
The client smiles too widely. It's a dance, not unlike feeding pigeons, always the risk of getting pooped on, but worth it for the crumbs. Here's your mainstream fact. Roman society thrived on patronage. Wealthy and influential men offered legal or financial help to poorer citizens in exchange for political support, public praise, or just a reliable audience for monologues. Fringe tidbit. Some clients became so numerous and theatrical in their displays of loyalty that satirists
mocked them in poems,
depicting clients racing across the city at dawn to greet patrons with insincere flattery and crusty wine breath. You lean against a column, listening as two older men debate grain prices in Egypt. One insists the Nile is misbehaving again, the other blames pirates. Both nod gravely. Neither seems to be a farmer. Nearby, a younger man, barefoot, wild-eyed, probably a student, rants passionately about stoic virtue and the futility of wealth. His toga has a stain on it the size of a dinner plate. A group of youths listens, half interested, more fascinated by his hand gestures than his logic. Suddenly the crowd parts slightly as a senator strides through, flanked by assistants. His toga has a purple stripe, the mark of status, and his expression is carefully blank. The face of a man who knows someone somewhere is slandering him in verse. You catch snippets of conversation as he passes. The roads to Ostia are a
mess again. Did you hear what Calpurnia said about the tax collectors? No one trusts that astrologer anymore.
You follow the flow toward the basilica, a large, echoing hall used for everything from law courts to business deals. Inside, the marble floors are cool underfoot, and the air smells faintly of wax, ink, and ambition. At one table, two men argue over a contract while a scribe tries to keep up, his stylus tapping like rain on parchment. At another, someone is offering a statue commission to a sculptor who keeps referencing the right cheekbones of Jupiter. You don't ask. A woman with a sharp chin and sharper eyes strides past with scrolls under one arm. She's whispering, to a man who looks like he hasn't blinked in an hour. They vanish behind a curtain, possibly lawyers, possibly actors. In Rome, sometimes it's the same thing. Historians still argue whether the basilicas were purely civic or quietly political. Were they halls of justice or marketplaces of maneuvering? Like most Roman spaces, they were both. Multi-use, multi-voiced, very loud. You sit at the edge of a bench next to an elderly man scribbling something into a tablet. He notices you watching and grins. "A joke," he says, "about a senator and a goat." He doesn't elaborate. Outside again, the light is softer, the voices lower. Someone plays a flute nearby, its notes weaving through the colonnade like silk thread. You pass a mural depicting Mercury in mid-stride, scroll in one hand, purse in the other, a god of communication and commerce. Seems fitting. You step out. Into the open square, gaze back at the forum and realize how much has changed since morning. The arguments continue, but gentler now. The shadows stretch longer. Rome exhales. You pass a boy chalking something onto a wall, a crude drawing of a politician with donkey ears. You smirk. He shrugs. "Everyone thinks it," he says. And here's the charm. Even with its endless business and backdoor deals, the city lets people speak.
Not always wisely, not always kindly, but out loud. You find a bench where an old woman is peeling fruit. She offers you a slice. You accept. It's tart, but good. She talks about her neighbor's noisy parrot. You nod, grateful for a moment.
Of fruit and quiet. Then you rise once more and walk the perimeter of the square. The colonnades buzz softly behind you, like bees in marble hives, and Rome, never quite still, carries on beneath your feet. You're heading downhill now, away from the official marble and into the city's soft underbelly, where incense replaces oratory and devotion hums just beneath the noise. The air grows warmer again, richer, touched with smoke, oil, and something faintly floral. You've stumbled into the quiet chaos of a neighborhood religious festival. You weren't invited. That's fine. No one is, officially. You just show up. The street is half blocked by a canopy strung between two buildings. Bunches of dried laurel and olive branches hang from ropes, swaying gently in the breeze. Children weave between adult legs, holding tiny clay figurines. A group of women stands beside a makeshift altar, whispering to each other and arranging bowls, wine, honey, flatbread, and something that looks like boiled eggs but smells like ambition. You ease into the edge
Of the crowd, no one pays you much mind.
Everyone's watching the priest. He's barefoot, dressed in a simple white robe and currently sprinkling flower petals into a brazier that's spitting like an annoyed cat. He chants in a low, rhythmic tone, not quite a song, not quite speech. People bow their heads. One person sneezes. No one blinks. Here's your mainstream fact. Romans had household gods, lares and penates, public deities, imported cults, and street-level rituals for nearly everything. Religion was layered, messy, and deeply entwined with civic life. It was less about belief and more about doing. You worshipped because that's what Romans did. A woman beside you hums under her breath as she dusts off a small wooden statue of Fortuna. She kisses its head and places it gently beside the bread offering. A little girl leans over and whispers, she likes figs too, and drops one into the bowl. A nearby cat eyes it with interest, fringe tidbit. Some Roman festivals were so local that historians don't even have names for them. They left behind no grand temples, just ashes, graffiti, and a few scattered figurines buried in the corner of someone's kitchen. The priest lifts his hands, speaks a few final words, and the crowd murmurs in reply. The offering burns with a crackle. The smoke rises like a question no one expects an answer to. The ritual is over, but the party is not. Musicians strike up a soft tune with pipes and lyres. Neighbors bring out trays of figs, cheese, nuts, and wine. Someone uncorks a jug that smells strongly of yesterday's regret. People laugh, pass cups, and talk over each other with the joy of shared tradition and slightly lowered inhibitions. You find a spot near a basket of bread and sit cross-legged. A man beside you toasts the sky. "To Mercury," he says, "for good messages." Then he toasts the ground. "To Ceres for bread." Then he toasts his own foot. You raise your cup in solidarity. A group of boys begins dancing, awkward, earnest, giggly. They trip over each other's tunics. One gets tangled in a garland and flops dramatically onto the ground. Applause. An older woman recites a prayer, half remembered, half invented. No one corrects her. She's got the rhythm right, and that's what matters. Historians still argue whether Roman religion was deeply spiritual or merely habitual. Did they truly believe, or just follow tradition? Likely both. What's clear is that it mattered to the rhythm of the day, to the feeling of safety, to the glue that held neighbors together. You wander briefly to the edge of the gathering. A boy is sketching something into the dirt with a stick. He tells you it's a map of the gods' houses. They're all next to each other, except Mars, who doesn't like anyone. Fair. You sip more wine. It's sweet and spicy, infused with herbs. Someone nearby is grilling something that smells suspiciously like octopus. You're not brave enough to ask. As the sun dips lower, lanterns are lit, simple clay ones flickering softly, casting uneven glows across faces and walls. The street shimmers with small light and big voices. You return to the altar one last time. It's quiet now, just embers and half-burned petals. A wooden statue leans slightly, watching. You nod to it. Just in case, someone hands you a honey cake, still warm. You bite in. It's sticky, dense, just sweet enough to make you close your eyes for a second. The priest walks by, yawning. He scratches his beard and mutters, "Back to paperwork tomorrow." You don't ask what kind of paperwork priests have. And here's the beauty of it all. These rituals aren't grand. They're not built for tourists or carved in stone. They're lived, small, soft, a bowl of wine, a loaf of bread, a shared story. That's all a god needs. You watch as the crowd begins to scatter. Neighbors carry home trays. Children tug on cloaks. The last song drifts into silence. You follow a quiet path away from the flickering street, the taste of honey still on your tongue. The festival, like everything in Rome, moves on, but its warmth lingers, like the last smoke curl from an altar fire. Twilight has arrived, casting the city in hues of bronze and lavender. The air is cooler now, tinged with ash from street braziers and the faint metallic scent of oil lamps just being lit. You wander down a quiet street where shutters have been drawn and doorways swept, drawn by the promise of food and warmth. You're headed to a domus you haven't visited before, invited by a distant acquaintance who claimed, between mouthfuls of wine, that his cook made lentils so good even the lares demanded seconds. As you approach, the door creaks open before you can knock. A slave ushers you inside without ceremony. The house is lively, but not chaotic. Candles flicker in sconces along the walls. There's laughter somewhere distant, soft, layered, relaxed. You follow the scent of roasting meat and herbs through a corridor that opens into a modest dining room. The table is low, surrounded by cushioned couches. It's set with mismatched cups, gleaming plates, and a few dangerously wobbly amphorae. The host waves at you from his reclined position, gesturing toward an empty couch as if inviting you into a conspiracy. You settle in, tucking your feet beneath. You, the cushion warm from the body of whoever was here last. A bowl of olives is passed your way. You take one. It's briny, rich, with a hint of something, maybe thyme, maybe dust. You don't ask. Here's your mainstream fact. Roman dinners, scene, were social events. They could be grand banquets or simple affairs, but reclining while eating was standard among the elite. Sitting upright to eat was for children, slaves, or those not invited. Fringe tidbit, some Romans flavored their wine with seawater, believing it enhanced both the taste and the intellect. You try the one in your cup. It tastes like regret with a hint of rosemary. The first course arrives. Boiled eggs with a sprinkle of pepper, lentils spiced with cumin, and fried cheese wrapped in fig leaves. You try a little of everything. The eggs are soft, the lentils are excellent, the cheese melts like a compliment. Conversation rolls easily between courses. One guest, wearing a tunic, dyed just red enough to hint at scandal, tells a story about mistaking a senator's wife for a statue. Laughter ripples. Another man leans in to whisper about a recent dream involving Mercury, a camel, and a sudden inheritance. A young musician is pulled from the hallway and asked to play something. He plucks his lyre with casual elegance, humming between notes. The song is light, meandering, full of minor chords and mischief. Someone tries to sing along and forgets half the words. More laughter. The next course appears: roasted chicken, stuffed dormice, honey-glazed carrots, and a salad that may or may not contain dandelions. The host claps once and says, "May this meal be as memorable as my uncle's third marriage, surprising, messy, and somehow not fatal." You eat slowly, savoring. The flavors are stronger now, bolder, a mix of sweet and sharp, soft and crunchy. You wipe your fingers on a cloth that was once white. A discussion begins about dreams. Someone insists that eating figs before bed summons prophetic visions. Someone else swears by pomegranate seeds. A third declares that if you see a goose in your dream, it means someone envies your sandals. Everyone looks at your feet. You nod gravely. Historians still argue whether Roman dinner parties were primarily political, personal, or performative. Likely, it depended on the night and the wine. Tonight, it feels like theatre with a very edible script. The final course is served. Dried fruit, nuts, honey cakes, and a mysterious pudding that shimmers in the lamplight. You take a bite. It tastes like cinnamon, cream, and a fleeting memory of pears. You don't question it. A boy brings round a basin and a jug of water for washing hands. The water is warm, scented faintly with rose. You dip your fingers, pat them dry, and sigh with the kind of contentment that only comes after eating slightly too much. The host raises his cup for a final toast. To food, to friends, and to whoever left their sandals on the roof. Everyone laughs. No one claims them. You recline deeper, full and drowsy. The conversation begins to drift. Philosophy, politics, something about temple tax reforms that dissolves into a wine-fueled poem. Someone snores, no one minds. And here's the comfort of it all. Roman dinners weren't just about the food. They were about being together, reclining, speaking, listening, sipping, letting the night stretch itself around you like a soft wool blanket. You excuse yourself quietly, slipping out through the courtyard, your footsteps muffled on mosaic floors. The stars are brighter now, the air cooler. You walk home with the sweetness of honey still clinging to your teeth. Rome sleeps eventually, but it always dines first. The street outside is quiet now, lit only by oil lamps casting long, golden trails across worn stone. You walk slowly, your body warm and a little heavy from food, your mind adrift in the soft swirl of conversation and cumin. Rome at night is a different city, not silent exactly, but hushed, more private. The crowds retreat behind walls. The voices soften. The sharp edges of marble and politics blur into something gentler, dreamier, like a painting left out in the rain. You turn down a narrow alley, then another. The path curves until it opens onto a small courtyard, a pocket of stillness surrounded by modest homes. One has a curtain drawn across the doorway. Another has a small lamp glowing on a windowsill, flickering with each breeze. A dog snores, legs twitching as it chases something in its sleep. You sit for a moment on the stone ledge of a dry fountain, letting the city breathe around you. Somewhere in the distance, someone coughs. Someone else laughs, quick and high, like they weren't expecting to. A group of teenagers pass by, whispering a song that sounds vaguely like a marching chant. It's late, but not too late. You stroll again, past shadowed temples and shuttered taverns. You spot a man seated under an arch, legs stretched out, eyes
Half closed. He's playing with a strand of prayer beads, not counting them, just turning them in his fingers like thoughts. You nod to him.
He doesn't reply, doesn't need to. Here's your mainstream fact. Most Romans didn't sleep in one long stretch. Instead, their nights were broken. First sleep, then a period of wakeful quiet, then second sleep, a time for prayers, reflection, or sometimes a snack. Fringe tidbit. Some believed the quiet hours between sleeps were best for writing poetry or receiving dreams from the gods. Others used the time to stoke their hearths or check that the roof hadn't mysteriously caught fire again. You pass a bakery. It's not open yet, but the ovens are already glowing. Inside, a boy kneads dough, eyes half shut, hands moving with muscle memory alone. He doesn't look up, but his body sways in time with the press and pull of the bread. Further down, you find a woman sweeping her threshold. The bristles whisper against the stone. She looks up, smiles faintly, and says, "The dust comes back faster than the gods take it." You nod. You believe her. Historians still argue whether Roman nights were restful or restless. Some see them as tranquil interludes. Others suggest the city never truly slept. Its noise just changed shape. In truth, Rome is always half awake. You turn into another lane. A window is open above. Voices drift out, gentle, rhythmic. Someone's reciting poetry. You catch a few lines about stars, shoulders, and stolen figs. Possibly romantic, possibly just hungry. The breeze carries in the scent of burned oil, laundry soap, and something faintly floral, maybe lavender, tucked in a corner for the gods, or someone's leftover bathwater. You stop under an archway, pressing your hand to the cool stone. You feel it hum faintly, as if the entire city still carries a pulse, even when the people pause. A cat slinks past your legs, tail high. It stops, stares at you, blinks once, and moves on. You take that as approval. Up ahead, you
Spot a man balancing a ladder against a lamppost.
He mutters as he trims the wick, adjusting the flame to cast just enough light without tempting the wind. He sees you and mutters, "Better than tripping?" You agree. You reach a small bench overlooking a quiet courtyard garden. You sit again. Your feet are grateful. The moon is out now, hovering above the rooftops like a coin resting on the city's brow. A soft scraping sound behind you. You turn to see a girl drawing shapes in a pile of ash with a stick. Circles, dots, maybe a constellation, maybe just something to do with her hands. She looks up and says, "If you draw a snake around the moon, it won't rain tomorrow." You ask if that works. She shrugs. Sometimes. You smile. You believe her too, and here's the wonder of it. For all the clamour and pride, for all the empire's grandeur and thunderous declarations, the nights of Rome are soft, human, fleeting, the hush between columns. You rise, brush the dust from your robe, and begin the slow walk home. The path curves around a temple, cuts across a silent garden, and finally leads you back to your building. Your body is tired in the best way, satisfied, stretched, content, and Rome, still humming beneath your sandals, feels like a lullaby sung by brick and breath. You climb the creaking stairs of your insula with slow feet and a full belly. The wood groans underfoot, and you pause briefly to let an old man with a broom pass by in silence. His tunic is tied unevenly, and he nods at you like you've just shared a secret. Back in your room, the shutters rattle faintly in the night. Breeze. The oil lamp glows low, flickering but steady. You don't light a second one. This light is enough. More would only chase away the softness that started to settle in your bones. Your cot waits in the corner, slightly askew, slightly
lumpy, entirely yours.
The blanket is folded neatly. You unfold it slowly, like a ritual. But before you sleep, you look out the small window. Rome is different at night. Not just quieter, more honest. You see silhouettes moving on distant rooftops, cats leaping between tiles. A woman on the opposite balcony braids her hair by candlelight, fingers moving like water. Below, someone mutters to themselves as they empty a chamber pot into the alley. A group of youths passes, whispering something that sounds like a drinking song, giggling with every wrong note. One of them drops a cup. It clatters. No one retrieves. The city is winding down. Here's your mainstream fact. Many Roman homes, especially for the poor, didn't have private bedrooms. Sleeping arrangements were flexible, shared, and always dictated by practicality. Space was a luxury, privacy even more so. Fringe tidbit, some Romans believed that sleep was a kind of borrowed death, a nightly journey to the realm of dreams, where the soul floated free before returning at dawn. They lit lamps, not just to see, but to guide their spirits home again. You lie down slowly, adjusting the thin cushion beneath your head. The sounds outside continue. Distant footsteps, the faint clatter of amphorae, a baby crying 3 floors down. But it all feels muffled, like a city speaking in its sleep. A sudden gust swings the shutter inward. You rise, latch it gently, and sit for a moment at the edge of your bed. Your fingers trace the grooves in the wooden frame, worn by years of
restless shifting and quiet dreams. Below you hear 2 women arguing about laundry. One insists the other borrowed her soapstone. The other denies it, loudly. Then they laugh.
It ends with a hiccup and a shared song you don't recognize. You smile. You lie back again, letting your limbs stretch across the mattress. One foot touches the cool wall. The blanket covers your chest just enough. You pull it higher anyway. The lamp flickers lower. The sounds outside start to blend. A dog barking once, then twice. A clay cup knocked over by accident or by ghost. A lullaby hummed for no one in particular. Historians still argue whether urban Romans got quality rest in their cramped, chaotic quarters. But tonight, with the breeze slipping through the shutter cracks and the ceiling beams creaking gently like an old lullaby, you think, maybe, yes. Maybe it's not about silence, maybe it's about belonging. You hear someone sneeze on the roof. A cat yowls in reply. Somewhere in the distance, a flute begins again, tentative, like someone practicing just before sleep. And here's what you know, lying on this coarse mattress under a frayed blanket with a belly full of lentils and sea-salted wine. Rome never really stops. It hums, it sighs, it rearranges itself in sleep, and you are part of it, wrapped in wool, draped in darkness, floating on the edge of a world built from brick and breath. The lamp finally gutters out, leaving only the soft blue of moonlight and the echo of fading footsteps below. Your body rests, but your mind drifts, not restless, just full. Not of worries or lists or unspoken thoughts, but of small things. Things that don't demand attention but offer it anyway. A scrap of poetry you heard at dinner. The cat that blinked at you. The smell of sandalwood smoke clinging to your tunic. The way the paving stones seemed to hum under your feet near the
Forum, like they remembered more than they let on. You roll onto your side. The straw-stuffed mattress groans, but it doesn't fight you.
You're more comfortable than you thought possible. You let your mind wander through the city again. You revisit the baths, still warm, still echoing with voices that overlapped but never overwhelmed. You remember the vendor who handed you a fig and winked like you shared a secret. The way the sandals fit your feet perfectly, like they'd been waiting for you longer than you'd been walking. You picture the domus gardens, the polished courtyards with shadowed columns, a child dropping, a honey cake and a dog eating it before it touched the ground, a priest blessing something that might have been a bowl of soup, and the sound of the city at night, layered, living, unpredictable, and absolutely ancient. You stare up at the wooden ceiling beams, barely visible now, but strong, holding up your room, your street, your part of the world. You hear the rustle of a neighbor turning over in their sleep. A snore, then quiet. A shutter tapping in the breeze. You close your eyes, just for a moment. Here's one last fringe detail to cradle your thoughts. Some Romans believed that dreams weren't just reflections of your day, but messages from your deeper self, sent by the gods disguised in riddles, waiting to be heard. So you listen, even now. Not for words, but for weight, for breath, for the stillness between thoughts. And in that silence, the city holds you. Not as a stranger, not even as a visitor, but as one of its own, a heartbeat, a breath, a quiet soul tucked under a woolen blanket in the belly.
Of something impossibly old and endlessly alive. Now let your breath slow. Let the hum of the city fade behind you. Fountains dripping, dogs sighing, footsteps softening into memory.
Let the weight of the day melt gently from your limbs, the cool of the walls, the warmth of your blanket. Let them blend into comfort. You've walked the streets of Rome. You've eaten its bread, bathed in its steam, whispered at its altars, and listened to the voices of poets and bakers and barefoot children. You've felt the weight of stone beneath your sandals, and the scent of olive oil still clings faintly to your hands. But the city doesn't need you now. It's asleep, and you are allowed to drift with it. Nothing more needs to be done. No errands, no decisions. Not even any dreams unless they want to come softly, like a breeze stirring the edge of a curtain. Let the breath deepen now, in and out, slow and steady. Picture the oil lamp, its flame long gone, but its warmth still in the room. Picture the sky over the rooftops, stars wide, still, watching without judgment. You're wrapped in the same night as the temples and taverns, the cats on rooftops, the laurel trees in the courtyards. Rome sleeps and you sleep with it, not apart from it, within it. Sink into that thought, let it hold you, let it hush you. You are safe, you are still, you are home. Sleep now. Sleep, sleep.